Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Canard Boulevard. Today we're going to be talking about and testing for hypoxia coming up. Hypoxia, what is it? Hype means low, oxygen, low oxygen in blood. So basically, you're not breathing enough oxygen. Our air is about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% other stuff. So our lungs are designed to breathe in 21% oxygen and get all we need on the ground. We weren't actually evolved to be able to breathe way up at altitude, so typically we work best, our lungs work best at oxygenating our blood when we're on the ground. That's not to say that people that live in high elevations like Colorado, where they might be at 5,000 or 6,000 feet or even higher, can't breathe. If you live in an environment like that over time, you will become accustomed to it. You'll actually develop more capacity to extract that lower pressure or concentration of oxygen into your lungs and your bloodstream. The higher you go up, the lower the air pressure. If you heard on the radio and they'll talk and they'll give me the altimeter setting, they might say, hey, it's 29.92 or 30.08. That is the weight of a column of air from space all the way down to sea level. And it varies depending on temperature and number of other factors. But it's that weight of air above us that pressurizes the air down here at the ground, and our lungs depend on that pressurized air to force oxygen molecules into our lungs. And then, of course, the same goes for carbon monoxide. We want to breathe out carbon monoxide. I'm not going to get into a lot of aeromedical factors here, but basically nature abhors a vacuum. So if you have lots of oxygen here and not so much over here, it's want to balance. So if you have more oxygen in the air and less oxygen in your blood, it's going to want to move oxygen into your blood. Same goes when you expire, you breathe out carbon dioxide because you have more carbon dioxide in your blood and almost none in the air around you, hopefully. And so that will move the carbon dioxide out of your blood and into the surrounding air. The problem becomes when we get up to higher altitudes, there's less of that pressure, the oxygen atoms are more spread out, and there's less of this balancing effect to actually move those oxygen atoms across the membranes in your lungs and into your blood. What happens then is that your oxygen saturation, which is a percentage of how much oxygen your blood is capable of carrying. At 100%, your blood, or more accurately, your red blood cells, which is what carries the oxygen to the rest of your body, can't absorb any more oxygen. So you're fully saturated. As you go up in altitude, the oxygen saturation in your blood will go down because your lungs are less efficient at moving that lower pressure of oxygen into your blood. You may have seen in some of my other videos, I have a pulse oximeter, which is a little device you put on your finger, and it will actually read out the oxygen saturation in your blood. And I've seen it as low as 89, 88 when I've been really high up, which is way too low. So what happens when you have not enough oxygen in your blood? Well, if it's really low, if it gets below 70, that could be lethal. So you definitely don't want to go there. Anything below mid-90s, you're impaired. Your body really depends on oxygen to function correctly, particularly your eyes. Your eyes are the first thing to notice effects when you are starting to suffer from the effects of hypoxia. In the daytime, I know if I'm at 10, 11, 12,000 and I look at a clear blue sky, I see artifacts. I see little things moving and stars and things. And it's stuff that's not there. And I know it's hypoxia that's doing that to me. Your night vision is even more affected. Your night vision is so much worse without proper oxygen. I did a test a number of years ago. It's probably going about 20 years ago, where I was up flying with someone else, and we were in a twin. And I want to think it was a Navajo. I don't really remember. But we had oxygen, and we were probably 18,000, 19,000 feet, and it was nighttime. And as an experiment, I took my cannula out of my nose, my supplemental oxygen cannula, so that I went off oxygen, because I wanted to see what difference I would see, because I heard that you would see a huge difference. So I took my cannula out, looked around, and waited a couple minutes, and I'm like, well, I don't see any difference. It obviously isn't affecting me. Even at nighttime, I must be young and I'm in good shape, so I'm not affected by this hypoxia. So then I put my oxygen back on, and it was like somebody turned up the lights. As soon as I took one breath of oxygen, all of a sudden, all the lights around me literally looked like somebody took a dial and turned everything up. I was like, whoa, that's a huge difference. So I could definitely tell you from experience that your night vision suffers dramatically without oxygen, and it goes away gradually enough that you don't notice it. That's the thing about hypoxia, is one of the first things that goes away when you become hypoxic is judgment. So if you are becoming hypoxic, you might not know about it. You might not recognize it. So I consider it important that you actually test this. I did this a number of years ago. I went into a pressure chamber up in Canada, and they will depressurize the chamber that you're inside to simulate going up in altitude. They do the same thing. They bring a booth to air shows, and instead of decreasing the pressure, they'll just pump in nitrogen that displaces the oxygen so that everyone inside becomes hypoxic. Same effect, different way of getting there. And what they had us do was actually write. We had to write our name and our address, I think it was, over and over and over on a piece of paper. And as they brought the altitude higher and higher and higher. And I remember doing this, and I was like, this is easy. I am acing this test. Everybody else is an idiot. I could do this because I know what I'm doing, and obviously I'm in good shape, and I have no problem with hypoxia whatsoever. I'm writing and writing and writing. And so the test ended. I looked down, and I'm looking at my paper. I'm like, yeah, I did perfect. I repeated my name and address over and over. I can read it all. It's perfect. And then they brought our altitude back down, and the hypoxia went away. And I looked at my paper, and I wrote my name and address. And then the second time was kind of messy. A third time it was just a squiggle, and after that it was just like squiggles on the page, and it was unreadable. Yet, when I was hypoxic, I was looking at that, and I was thinking, I did great. I have no problem at all. So I had no idea that I was being affected by hypoxia. It's important to do that kind of test for yourself because the symptoms of hypoxia are different for everybody. For me, I feel a strange warmness in my neck, right by my jugular veins, and then I said I see those visual artifacts. That's how I experience hypoxia. It may not be the same for you, and it probably isn't. So it would be a good idea to, in a controlled environment, experience hypoxia intentionally, just so you know what the symptoms are, because your judgment will go away and you won't realize that you're hypoxic. So you need to recognize those symptoms early. There's two different ways of dealing with hypoxia at altitude. The first is supplemental oxygen. You simply put a cannula on and you feed pure oxygen into your nose as you breathe. And every time you take a breath in, there's two different kinds. One is like a hospital where it continuously feeds oxygen at you, and when you breathe out, it just gets wasted. The other is it senses when you inhale, and it gives you a blast of oxygen up your nose. That uses your oxygen much more efficiently, and it lasts longer. The idea is you're breathing pure oxygen, so the amount of oxygen molecules that you're getting into your lungs is way higher. So instead of 21%, it's in the 90s or even close to 100% oxygen. And that means you have much, much more oxygen getting into your blood. So even though you're at a higher altitude where the pressure is less, because you have such a high concentration of oxygen in what you're breathing in, it moves across those layers into your bloodstream inside your lungs. Another way is by pressurizing the cabin. This is what airliners do, and they simply pump air into the inside of the cabin, which is a pressure vessel, and that brings the air pressure inside the aircraft down to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet, or the equivalent of what it would be at 5,000, 6,000, or 7,000 feet. And that way, everybody can breathe normally without supplemental oxygen. However, when you get high enough, and I don't actually know what the altitude is off the top of my head because I don't fly that high, the problem then is that the pressure is so low and the concentration of oxygen is so low that every breath you take, you actually remove oxygen out of your blood. The concentration of oxygen in your blood is higher than in the air at that altitude. So every breath you take, just like you were expiring carbon dioxide, you're now also removing oxygen from your blood. That's very bad. And if you experience that altitude, your consciousness is measured in seconds. You will pass out from lack of oxygen, and if you don't get oxygen, you will die. The most famous case of this happening was Payne Stewart, the golfer. His jet lost pressurization. Everybody inside died. And normally what will happen is the pilots will have a quick don mask, and they'll put that mask on, and it has to be put on within seconds so that they can maintain consciousness and then descend the aircraft to a safe altitude. That's something that airline pilots practice regularly as part of their training. But you might say, how's that going to work? Because if they're just putting oxygen on, there's still very low pressure, so is the concentration going to be enough to push it across into the lungs? No, it's not. So with how those masks work is they are pressure delivery masks. That every time they sense you take a breath in, it opens a valve and it shoves oxygen into you. That's why the mask has a seal around your face so that it can force oxygen under pressure into your lungs, which then forces the oxygen across that layer inside your lungs and into your blood. Fighter pilots have the same thing. They have that sealed mask. That's why you don't have a beard as a fighter pilot, because you have to have that mask sealed against your face so that it can force oxygen into you as you breathe. And if you ever listen to a fighter pilot talk when they're up at altitude, every time they take a breath, you can hear it as it's forcing that oxygen into their lungs. So at what altitude do you need to have oxygen? Well, the FAA, there's regulations and then there's guidance. Guidance says anytime above 10,000 or 5,000 at night, which is reasonable, but I think I'd be even a little more conservative than that. I would prefer to have it at above 7,000 a daytime and 5,000 at night, based on the fact that at 7,000 feet, I can start feeling the symptoms of hypoxia. Many years ago when I was 20 and I had much more aerobic capacity, I didn't feel that, but I definitely feel it now. If you're a smoker, you need it even lower because your lung capacity is severely diminished. Don't smoke. The FAA says as a pilot, between 12,500 and 14,000, anytime you're at that for over 30 minutes, you need to have supplemental oxygen. Anything over 14,000, you must have supplemental oxygen. That's Part 91 for general aviation. For Part 135, like a commercial charter pilot, you need it for 10 to 12,000. Anytime you're going to be at that altitude for more than 30 minutes, you need oxygen, or above 12,000 feet at all. Passengers, you only need to give it to your passengers if you're above 15,000 feet. Who cares about the passengers? Let them go to sleep. In fact, for many decades, pilots who have been tasked with flying a plane load of rowdy, drunken passengers will quiet them down and put them to sleep just by putting the cabin altitude up a bit, because that hypoxia, especially people who are already intoxicated, just makes you sleepy and makes you want to go to sleep, and it works. Not that everyone does that, but it happens. So all this is leading up to, what am I going to do about oxygen in my airplane? So the easiest way is, and the cheapest way up front, is to buy an oxygen tank, which is an aluminum or steel tank that has high pressure oxygen in it and a mask. And you just turn it on and it flows oxygen into your nose through a cannula, and as you're flying, you use up some of that oxygen. There's a device you can buy that will actually sense when you inhale and will only allow oxygen to flow while you inhale, and that will make your oxygen bottle last a lot longer. Without that, you might get, well, it depends on the size of the bottle, but typical for a small airplane, 6 to 8 hours out of a bottle. And then you have to refill it. And the problem with refilling is that there's not a lot of airports that have oxygen, and the ones that can refill oxygen are typically larger ones, and now you've got landing fees and FBO service handling fees, especially Signature, and then it's maybe $100 to fill up your oxygen bottle. So it's not cheap, and it recurs. And you also have to worry about running out of oxygen at altitude. So what did I do? I did something completely different. I got an oxygen concentrator. So this is an OxyGo Next. It is the exact same unit as an Inogen G5. This is a device that has filters that filters out nitrogen and allows only oxygen to flow through. It is battery powered. You can plug it into the airplane. It will run off ship power. If you lose ship power, it will run for another 6 to 8 hours on its battery. It has a cannula on the end of it here, and it has a pulse delivery system, like I explained, where it will deliver oxygen only when you actually inhale. So you would put this over your head like this, over your ears, and the cannula up your nose. Every time you take a breath, it delivers oxygen into your nose. It never runs out. Well, actually it does. It has some filter inside, but these things are medical devices. They're designed to run 24/7. And after a year or two, you may have to replace a filter. In terms of flying your airplane, they're never going to need replacing because you are not using this 24/7 as a medical device. You do need a prescription to buy one of these legally. However, if you know people that you can get them from without a prescription, it can be done. You will find lots of these used on Facebook Marketplace and eBay. Actually, not eBay. I think eBay restricts them because they are prescription item. But Facebook Marketplace, there's lots of these things used because the people that use these things are people that have severe issues with their lungs. They're lifetime smokers and they've destroyed their lungs, and so they need supplemental oxygen in order to breathe, and then they die. And so these things go on the market relatively cheap. So if you can grab one of those units, it works in your airplane, and people have been using these for many years as supplemental oxygen in their airplanes. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to put this in my plane because I did just get this. I have not tested it out yet. And we're going to go up and fly, and I'm going to go up 1,000 feet at a time, measure my pulse oximetry and to see what my saturation is, and then I'll put the oxygen on and see how much it changes. And then we'll just keep climbing, and we'll just keep monitoring it every 1,000 feet or so, and to see how well this unit keeps my oxygen saturation at various altitudes. And when if it gets to a point where I'm mid to low 90s and it's no longer keeping up, then we'll call that's the ceiling that this is able to deliver oxygen at. Obviously, that's going to be tuned to me. If you do this, it's going to be different. I would suggest you do the exact same thing, test it out to see how it works for you and your physiology.
Hi there, Future Scott here. I showed the rough cut of this video to a friend of mine. He had two questions. One, is this legal in the eyes of the FAA? The answer is yes. The FAA specifies that supplemental oxygen is required. They don't say exactly how, they don't care. They actually list 4 different methods. One is obviously just a gaseous oxygen tank where you have compressed oxygen in a tank that's delivered to you. The second is liquid oxygen, where it's cryogenic. It has to be held at a very low temperature, and that stores a tremendous amount of oxygen in liquid form, but then you have to actually keep it very, very cold. The third is a candle generator, which is what you see inside airliners when the mast drops down and you yank it, it ignites this candle that burns, and I don't remember the chemical, sodium something or other. Anyway, when it burns, it generates oxygen above a certain temperature, and it gets very hot, and so it has to be inside this thing, inside the roof of the airline cabin, and that generates oxygen for a few minutes, enough for them to descend. The fourth one is what the FAA calls a molecular sieve oxygen generator, and that's what I have. An oxygen concentrator, oxygen generator, or the inevitable FAA acronym molecular sieve, MSOG, molecular sieve oxygen generator. So they actually mention that one by name. They also say it's commonly used in military aircraft like fighters. It says it's not so common in civilian aircraft, but it will likely be in the future. And I suspect that is the case, that once somebody that currently manufactures these things realizes there's actually a market for this, that they can sell things at airplane prices, that they will start selling these things for airplanes. Okay, that was the first question. The second question was, he said, you're wiring it into your airplane, which I've actually now already done, because remember, this is Future Scott. What happens if you lose power in the airplane? Well, the engine keeps running, and do I lose then oxygen? If I'm at 18,000 feet and I lose the oxygen, what happens? Well, nothing, because the unit has a battery in it that if it loses power, that battery will continue to power it for another 90 minutes at its highest setting, which is 6 liters per minute. And if you have it at a lower setting, it'll go 2-3 times that long. So an hour and a half is more than enough time to descend if you do lose power, so not a concern. All right, back to the video.
All right, so let's get the plane pre-flighted, pushed out onto the ramp, and we'll get this set up and go ahead and test this OxyGo Next Oxygen Concentrator.
All right, I'm going to take a baseline reading of my pulse oximeter, my pulse saturation. So my baseline, 100%. So I'm 100% saturation on the ground, which is what it should be. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to taxi, I'm going to climb out, and we'll climb to 7,000 feet, because I know at 7,000 feet I normally will have a lowered saturation. We'll take a reading, then we'll turn on the oxygen, and let it take effect, and we'll take another reading and see how much an effect it has. Medina traffic, experimental cozy 797 Delta Lima departing 09er Medina. All right, 2230. Everything's in the green. Airspeed's alive. There's 40. 55, 60, 65, pressure back. And up we go. Gear up. Pitch for VX. Everything's still in the green. All right, we're at 4,300 feet. Let's see what I'm at now. 4,500 feet. So I'm still at 98% at 4,400 feet. Boy, it is turbulent today. It is. I'm just getting tossed around like crazy. All right, there's 5,500 feet. Let's see what we're at now. 98%. Still pretty good. I am going to put the cannula on, so when it's time to start it up, I can do so.
Newcastle traffic, Warrior 281 runway Alpha, downward runway 5, Newcastle.
And one of the things I didn't mention is that you do get a benefit that when you are deprived of oxygen, when you have hypoxia, you get tired. So when you come down after flying at altitude and you've been deprived of oxygen, you'll be tired and you'll have a headache and you just don't feel great. Whereas if you have oxygen throughout the flight, that doesn't happen. So you come down feeling much more refreshed and less fatigued, and you don't get that hypoxia headache that you would otherwise have. All right, there is 8,000. Let's see what I'm at 8,000. 92%, so I'm definitely going down. There is a way that you can hold your breath. So if you breathe and you breathe in, hold your breath, and then let it out. It gives more time for oxygen to cross the barrier in your lungs. You can actually get more oxygen in. So you can see right now at 8,300 feet, I'm talking, which actually talking makes your oxygen level goes down because you're not breathing as much. So let's see what I'm at here. We're almost at 8,500. And if my oxygen goes down, I can actually take a deep breath and hold it, and it will come back up. That's only temporary, but it is something you can do. I'm at 95, so I take a deep breath, hold it, let it out, do it again, hold it, let it out. Yeah, that's, okay, so 96, it's not doing much. All right, so we're 85. Let's continue up to 10,005. Yeah, and I'm definitely feeling the hypoxia. So I know the feeling that I get in my neck, and I'm definitely feeling that now. So I can tell that my oxygen saturation is down. I mean, we're still perfectly legal here, we're only at 9,200 feet. Yeah, my oxygen saturation is now down to 94. So let's continue up to 10,005 and we'll see what we get. One of the other things about flying this high is that the air gets thinner, and because the air is thinner, there's less mass, there's less thermal mass. It's less efficient at taking heat away from the engine, so your CHTs gradually climb up because there's just not as much air
going through to cool it off. So I'm actually keeping my, I'm watching my CHTs as we climb up high, and I'm managing them with a mixture. The more fuel you put in, the cooler the engine runs. All right, so I'm definitely feeling it now. This is at the altitude where I normally am thinking, yeah, I wish I had oxygen now, because I can feel it. So we're at 10,000 feet now. Okay, we're 200 away from 10,005. Yeah, I am so feeling it. Okay, on the finger. We're coming up 10,004. I'm at 94%. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on this oxygen concentrator, and this thing can deliver up to 6 liters per minute in oxygen, and it is 90% oxygen. So it's not pure oxygen, but it is 90%, and it is on now. It takes a minute or two for it to start spooling up, and I'm going to stop talking because I need to breathe in through my nose in order for this to work. And we'll give it a couple minutes and see what my oxygen saturation goes to. All right, I can tell you already, I feel more clear-headed. The feeling that I get from, that I know I get when I'm hypoxic is gone. That's amazing. All right, let's take my pulse oximeter and see what reading we get. 100%. I'm at 100% oxygen. Okay, we're going to climb. Let's go up to 11.5. Well, you know what? We'll take it right up to 17.5. And we'll just call test it every 1,000 feet. Wow. If I knew it was going to make this much difference even at 10,000 feet, I would have got oxygen years ago. What a difference. I could feel a definite difference. It just like, my head is clearer. All right, 11,500. I'm at 99%. All right, continuing to climb. All right, 12,500. 99%. Continuing to climb. And 13,500. I'm still holding over 500 feet per minute climb.
Traffic hotel, the hotel's 5 nautical miles to the southwest of the field.
97%. Come down a little bit. We'll continue to climb. There's 14,000. There's the magic number. We're not allowed above without oxygen. There's 14,500. Still climbing, and our saturation is at 99%. I'm very impressed. We're continuing the climb. I feel fine. I do not feel any symptoms of hypoxia whatsoever. Outside air temperature here is 44 degrees. We're at 15,400. The one thing about flying much higher, especially if there is visible moisture, is that you have to be very conscious about freezing levels. You can very easily fly into freezing levels, and if you have visible moisture, that's ice. Ice is a very bad thing in a Canard. It turns your airplane into a lawn dart, so it is to be avoided at all costs in Canard airplanes. 15,005. Let's measure. 99% at 15,500 feet. And we're going to continue the climb. We're down to about 400 feet per minute now. This is where you wish you had a turbocharged engine, or at least a turbo normalized. As you can see, every time I take a breath, that green light lights up and tells you, hey, it's delivering oxygen. It is using the battery a lot faster than I thought. It says I have an hour 8 remaining on the battery at this delivery speed, which I guess is because it's delivering 6 liters per minute. I definitely would want to wire this into my airplane power, which I'll do. All right, there's 16,500. 1,000 feet away from 17.5. I'm still at 99%. Oh, yeah, 99% at 16,500 feet. I'm just going to turn this around because we're 70 miles away from our airport just in this climb. Here's what the world looks like from 17,000 feet. I doubted that this plane would get to 18,000. I'm totally wrong. we're at 17,000. We're still climbing 500 feet per minute, so definitely we'd make it. And there's 17.5. All right, there's 17,500. And I'm gonna let us accelerate there a little bit. Want to make sure we stay below 18,000 because I'm not on an IFR flight plan. All right, 17,500 feet, still at 97% oxygen saturation using the oxygen concentrated. I am happy with that. It is time to descend. Let's power back. So the answer is, this unit works up to 17,500 feet. It provides me, I feel absolutely fine. I feel no hypoxia symptoms whatsoever. I don't feel that funny feeling in my neck. I feel clear-headed. I would be very happy using this, cruising at this altitude. No question at all. I am thrilled to have this. And I expect I'll be using this at probably 7,000 and above in daytime and 5,000 and above at night. It's gonna make flying much better. Makes you feel better, basically it makes everything better, makes you a safer pilot. Plus it gives the ability to get up over weather and clouds that you might not otherwise be able to get up and over. 15,005, I'm showing outside air temperature at 32 degrees, so freezing. I see some little cloud layer there, but it's well below us. It'll be warmer by the time we get there. Let's bring the gear down. We are midfield. Canard, traffic experimental cozy 797, Delta Lima, left downwind, runway 9 or full stop, Medina. And gear is down. Wow, we got some thermals here. It's hard losing altitude. We got a lot of lift. My God, I'm gonna have to stretch this out. Giant traffic experimental cozy 797 Delta Lima left base, runway 9er, full stop, Medina. All right, let's bring the landing brake down. Brakes down, trim. Midnight traffic experimental cozy 797 Delta Lima, final, full stop, runway 9er, Medina.
500.
Wow, this is gusty. A little bit of a crosswind from the right. Ah, that was nice.
Medina traffic, Greeley, 771 to Yankee is 4 south, east of the field, inbound for Niner, Medina, full stop.
Medina traffic, experimental Cozy 7907, Delta Lima, clear, runway 9, Medina. Well, I would say that's an extremely successful test of new oxygen concentrator system. I am beyond thrilled with that. That's going to make a huge difference in my flying. I can get up over weather. I can get up high and take advantage of winds. I can get up high and not have a headache and feel refreshed. I can fly at night and keep my night vision. Just so many good benefits, and I really recommend anybody who has an airplane like this that you get some kind of oxygen system, because it makes a big difference. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more like it, hey, click like on this video, subscribe to the channel, you get notified every time I post something, and also leave a comment in the comment section below. What do you think about this? Do you have any comments? Do you have any experience with oxygen yourself? And I'd just like to know what you think. If you see any suggestions, corrections especially. Medina traffic, experimental Cozy 7907, crossing threshold of 19, Medina. Yeah, just leave a comment in the comment section below, because I love hearing from you guys and what you have to say, especially when you correct me. Hey, I saw a few corrections on my video from the Air Zoo at Kalamazoo, and I knew I was going to get a few of those planes wrong because I was just narrating it after the fact, so thanks for correcting me. I know that video just went live today. I'm flying this on a Saturday. Today's the day that video went live, so thanks for that. And if you have any other comments, corrections, hey, don't hesitate. Please leave them. I love hearing from you guys. Love interacting. Thanks for watching.